What's up, sneaker people? It's your boy FB Kicks and Gear, and I am back with another video. And as you can see, we've got another pair of Jordan 4 SB Pine Greens. And this pair I have right here is an updated pair. This is a different batch, and they've changed some things a little bit that make this different than the pairs that I've done in the past. So with all that said, I'm going to get into the nitty gritty of what makes the authentic pair authentic and what makes the rep pair replica, and you guys will be able to take all that and make all of the educated decisions that you need to make in regards to this shoe. So just like every other video, the Instagram account you'll be able to find the pictures of this shoe, this specific shoe, with all the different details and things that I mentioned will be on the screen right here. Take a look at those pictures and really do a deep dive into the details like I do in this video. So with that said, we don't start with the shoes, we start with the box, just so that we can kind of cross off the low-hanging fruit in terms of legit checking. So let's look at the boxes. So one of the things that the early pairs really struggled with, and a lot of reps struggled with, was the size of the box. And for whatever reason, they weren't getting the size of the box right, but now they still don't get the size of the box right. And you guys can't see it because it's a little bit off screen, but give me a second. There's a bit of a difference in the size of the box, as always. So if you have another Jordan 4 box that you can kind of match these up with, or even a Jordan 3 box, match them up and you'll see. If the box is smaller, pretty good indicator that you got something fishy going on. But from there, you can also see that there's a difference in color when you go from one box to the other. The authentic box is a darker cream, the rep box is a lighter cream, and the Jumpmen are different colors as well, with the authentic pair having a darker gray than the lighter gray of the rep pair. From there, we look at the box labels, and you can see, just like all of the other batches that I've done so far, the box labels look similar, but the text on the rep is a lot more bold than the text on the authentic pair. And you can see that mainly in the Air Jordan 4 Retro SP up at the top. Look how much bolder it is on the rep pair. Small subtle things, but you should be able to take any Jordan 4, match it up against this label, and see whether or not you're dealing with an authentic box at the very least. And that's it for the boxes. So with those out of the way, let's start talking about the shoes. And if you have watched my other videos, and I highly encourage you to do so, because a lot of what I'm doing here builds upon the stuff that I talked about in the other videos. But if you have watched my other videos, I've broken down what makes this Jordan 4 unique from other Jordan 4s. Mostly has to do with the shape. That toe box is supposed to be more reminiscent of the original Jordan 4s. We've seen this shape before in the Jordan 4 Ama Maniere as well. It's a slimmer toe box, it's a flatter toe box. Another thing that is different for this than it is for other Jordan 4s is that, unlike other Jordan 4s that have a back tab that is made of plastic, this has a rubber back tab, and the entire thing is rubber. It's flexible, it has this grip to it, which is supposed to help with longevity and perform tricks and things like that when you're skateboarding. Even the letters here, the Nike SB, are rubber. And another thing that makes it a little bit different is that this suede here is not a typical suede. It's a rougher, coarser suede. It's supposed to help with more grip and doing tricks and things like that, and a puffier tongue than normal Jordan 4s. And there's some stuff internally that makes it different, but all of that's supposed to come together to make a Jordan 4 skatable. And if you watch the other reviews, you know that there are aspects of the skatability part of what makes this shoe that reps just have not been able to replicate. So let's start there and kind of build off from there. So first and foremost, let's look at the shape of the toe box. We want a slimmer toe box shape, just like this. And when you compare, you can see that the shape is there, but the authentic pair is definitely a bit more slim than the rep pair here. They definitely have the slope going, but you can see how the toe box almost bulges out on the authentic pair, where it just slopes back on the rep. So, pay attention to stuff like that. One thing that I will say though, while we're looking at this view, this is, as far as looks goes, this is the closest suede that I've seen to an authentic pair out of the pairs that I've reviewed in the past. Remember that we were seeing a very fine long-haired suede on the other pairs that made it look a lot grainier and hairier than the authentic. Now these look virtually identical outside of the color being slightly different, but One thing that I can say is that this is a very, very soft, almost shaved down suede, while the authentic pair is coarse and it's rough. So while they look the same, they do not feel the same. But in terms of looks, definitely a lot closer in looks than previous pairs that I have seen. But while we're talking about color, let's start looking into the colors of the different aspects of the shoe, because color is something that other reps have struggled with as well. First and foremost, let's look at the greens. So let's start with the greens of the eye stays over here. You can see that the rep on the right is a little bit more of a darker forest green, while these are a pine green. And it's not a super obvious thing to see, but when you look at them side by side, you can see that the greens are different colors. And then from there, let's take a look at the midsole paint. Again, authentic pair on the left, rep pair on the right. The midsole paints are actually pretty damn close, if not exact. One of the things that I am super impressed with the reps of the pine greens is that they got the midsole paint right off the bat. Usually that is, unless the midsoles are black or white, it is usually a point of contention for replica Jordan 4s to match the color paint so well. And while the authentic pair might be a tad bit darker, maybe, they are really, really, really spot on. But from here you can see some of where the other color differences lie though. You can see that the white rubber here is definitely a brighter of a white than on the rep, and this is something that we've seen in other reps as well. This is almost like a darker gray as opposed to a white when compared to the authentic pair. You can also see a pretty drastic difference in the tooling of the midsole as well when it comes to these little cuts here. Definitely a lot deeper on the rep pair than on the authentic pair. Yeah, you can see that those grooves are definitely a lot deeper from the profile's perspective, and maybe that is something that was changed on these to help with skating. But you can see that the tooling cuts up in there, the grooves underneath, they come up differently on the rep pair on the bottom than they do on the authentic pair on the top. Other than that, you can see that they're definitely getting closer in color when it comes to the gum sole. Definitely a lot closer. Still slight differences in color, but it's a lot less obvious. Now that I'm looking at the soles in terms of the grooves and things, you can start to see a little bit of difference here in the tooling. Notice this gap right here is definitely a lot wider than it is on the pair over here, and maybe that plays into the difference in the grooves. You can also see it's a wider gap here on the authentic pair than it is here. Obviously this is going to be super hard to critique without having an authentic pair next to you, but nonetheless it's still something there that you can look at. So this is probably, in terms of color, probably the closest sole that I've seen so far. From there we'll swing around back to the back tab. And this has always been a point of contention for me when it comes to legit checking these. The back tabs look okay, although the spacing of the lettering is definitely different going from the rep pair to the authentic pair. Look at how close the Nike letters are together, while the rep definitely has more spacing. One thing I will say is that they are definitely getting closer to rubber. These are not, they don't feel plastic the same way the other pairs that I felt plastic, but it's definitely a different kind of rubber. These have grip to it that like you can feel running your fingers across. These do not have that grip, and you can also see like a slight color difference as well. But there's definitely something different going on here. But from there we'll go into the insides of the shoes, because this is something that I've been noticing on Rep Jordan 3s and 4s. Notice how the sock liner have these horizontal lines going all the way on the inside, and they are not there on the authentic pair, or at least they're there, but they are so much harder to see. They're so much less defined. In this view you can really see what I'm talking about here. These horizontal lines, I'm sure that has to do with how the materials are made and how the fabric is compiled, but it's there on the rep, and it's just very faint on the authentic pair. And the same thing goes for the tongue as well. You can see it a lot more visibly on the tongue of the rep pair than on the authentic pair, even though you can see it sort of on the authentic pair as well. It's just nowhere near as defined, but you can also see a color difference in the greens as well. You're almost dealing with more of a lucky green here on the inside than on the inside of the authentic pair. And then from there we'll take a look at the side profiles. One thing that I've noticed, again, with the Rep Jordan 4 is that they struggle to really match the sizing of the netting windows on the sides here. The Rep is just massive compared to the authentic pair, and it's not really something that it's easy to notice unless you get them side by side like this, but definitely a size difference. Look how much smaller the window of the authentic pair is compared to the Rep. Another thing that I'm noticing is that these are made of rubber as well, and these feel like they're getting closer to rubber, but they're still thicker and harder than the authentic pair. So a lot of this legit check guide is going by feel and getting them in your hand. So, you know, keep that in mind when you're doing this. But from there, one of the final things that I like to point out here is the tongue tag on the authentic pair seems to have this satiny kind of finish to it, which makes it shine, and the Rep pairs don't. It's just a standard matte flat Nike Jordan 4 Flight tongue, and you can see that not only that, but the Flight is bolder and darker green on the Rep than it is on the authentic pair, and this is something consistent I've seen across Reps altogether. Hopefully you guys can see that shine that I'm talking about. And then from there, overall, the materials feel very, very similar. They feel very similar. Older batches that I've seen have standard Jordan 4 leather, which is super synthetic, and it has a whole bunch of pitting to it. This one feels a lot better, and it doesn't have that pitting, or at least nearly not to the extent of the original. So they're definitely getting closer in terms of material. So from there, the only thing left to do is look at the Blacklight test. So let's do that. We know on the authentic Jordan 4s, there isn't really much reactivity there. You've got reactivity of the under netting a little bit. You've got some reactivity in the wings here because for whatever reason the rubber reacts that way, but nothing else really reacts outside of the little glue stains that you can see across and the stitching on the toe box. Also, you see like a glow in the dark effect going on when you put the Blacklight on the gum sole. So when you take the Rep, one of the things that I usually see in the other two pairs was a ton of guide marks that they kind of write on the shoe so that they can line things up. And usually there's an issue with how the wings glow. So let's take a look. Do we see any guide marks? Yes, tons of guide marks, just like the other pairs. You do see that toe stitch is glowing and it reacts to the Blacklight like we like to see. You don't get the glow in the dark effect that the gum sole on the authentic pair does when you shine it. Just so that you guys can see it side by side, what I mean by the glow in the dark effect. Hopefully you guys can see it. Look at how the authentic pair reacts, and then look at how the Rep pair reacts. It doesn't react at all to the light, but you can see how much more brighter it is. And then from there, we'll take a look at the wow. So this is the first time that I've seen a pair that reacts the same way, at least for the wings. Usually I'll see the other pairs that I saw, either the wing didn't react at all, or just the tip would react. So they're definitely getting closer. Still, there's some differences here. So that was probably the most successful Blacklight test that I've done on these pairs specifically, but still some of the same flaws that are carrying over from the other batches. This is definitely a better batch. There's some issues, but it's a better batch. So you got to keep yourself up to date on what's going on. That is pretty much it. I will say, just as like a recap, pay attention to the things that make this shoe special when you're legit checking, because those are what your legit check indicators are going to be. The rubber, the suede, the gum midsole. There are these things that go into this that make it different, that the reps struggle with, and that's how you're going to be able to do your legit checking and your QCing if that's the route you're going to go. So with all that said, here is the information that you'll be able to see. The Instagram account, you'll be able to see more of this. They're definitely getting closer in terms of what this is supposed to be. It's still not perfect, which is good for the people that want to do legit checking and buy the authentic pair. So yeah, go to that Instagram account, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.